everyone, and welcome to the Political Fixer training. I'm just going to do a quick test here. I want to see if everyone can see and hear me okay. I know that we're using some new technology and we wanted to make sure that this was accessible to as many people as possible. So if we can, just want to make sure. Oh, I see Leah from North Carolina. All right, Leah, let me know that you can hear me okay. Good morning. All right. Um, Let me get a test from the team really fast and then we will dive in. All right, I see Luis on here. Awesome. That's fantastic. You're going to get to hear a little bit more about Luis and the fantastic organization that he is with shortly. So let me just run one more quick test. And then we are all good. Yay! All right. Okay, everybody. Good morning on this lovely day. If some of you are joining us before you head out to a No Kings event, please make sure that you practice all safety, but go out there and really enjoy your opportunity to speak out loud. We put together this training very specifically on this day because for a number of people, protesting just might not be their flavor, and that's totally okay. So if you're someone that's catching this on your way out the door, or you're someone who doesn't plan to attend events like that, that's okay. Part of the entire point of this training is to give you other ways that you can get involved in the different types of things that are happening, how you can create more opportunities for engagement and organization, but also how you can leverage moments like these protests and turn them into meaningful action. Things like this are a fantastic spark. They are a fantastic momentum shift. They can force the media to cover what's going on in a different way. They show visible unity to people who might feel like they're the only ones that can't believe what's happening right now or think that this is wrong. So they serve a really important purpose. But what we're going to talk about today is some real specific items on how you can leverage any type of energy or momentum into organization that actually yields final results. And that might be changing political makeups, it might be changing legislation, and it also might be changing perspective on different issues. So we're going to talk about that very, very specifically. Okay, so if you wanted to share this link with anyone, feel free. If you can't make the whole thing, or for those of you that are watching us recorded, that's no problem. We're going to be doing a lot more of these types of trainings, and we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to not only get involved today, but we're going to be going deeper into a lot of these topics. If you have the desire for us to go to your community or to offer a specific training, I'll give you an example. We're going to touch briefly on fundraising today, different techniques and kind of the top mistakes people make. We're going to just spend a few minutes on that, but that could be an entire training session in and of itself. We're going to talk about messaging and how to be effective with messaging. We're going to spend a little bit more time on that today, but that again could be an entire day worth of training all on its own. So if you find that there are topics that you latch onto that you want to go deeper, let us know and we can either schedule more online or we can come to your community as well. I also want to say as we dive in that if anyone decides to donate during this training and other events that we're going to be doing this month, then we are going to be splitting those proceeds between the Political Fixer PAC, Equal Rights Now, and our Spotlight organization for the month. Our Spotlight organization is the Hillsborough County LGBTQ Democratic Caucus. They are a very unique organization in the fact that their name is somewhat misleading. Allow me to share. First of all, they are based in Hillsborough County, but their impact goes much farther and wider than Hillsborough County. They have been involved in a number of different key races up and down the state of Florida. And as you all know, the LGBTQ community has been consistently under the attack in many states, but they have definitely held their own in Florida against these attacks and also tried to help a number of other organizations. They are technically a Democratic caucus, but they welcome people from a number of different backgrounds, and they are not officially a mouthpiece of the party. In fact, they have to get their own funding a lot of the time. They organize their own events, and while they are the LGBTQ caucus, and proudly so, and do so much important work there, they reach into other organizations as well. They are constantly volunteering and offering support for other groups, including the Hispanic Caucus and other organizations, women's organizations. So they're a very noteworthy group, and their funding was impacted, as you can imagine, with all of the everything that's been going on in Florida and the essentially the hate against this community. So if you can support them, not just today, but moving forward, and we'll be talking about them a lot more as we move forward. Don't want to forget that in all of this, while he likes to hog all of the oxygen in the room, 47, it is Pride Month and it is also Juneteenth, and we're just not going to allow him to steal all of the spotlight from so many worthy causes that are stories of victory and overcoming obstacles. We're absolutely not going to allow him to do that. So, what are we going to do today? And Sarah, if you could please share that fundraising link with everybody in the chat, that would be fantastic. We have our political fixer team on here today, and I definitely want to thank them for that being early on a Saturday morning. Okay, so our mission overall that we say over and over and over is engage, educate, empower. I mean, we have fancier words for it. Different organizations that I'm involved with or I've founded have their own specific so-called boilerplate missions, and those are very important, and we take those very seriously. But if you want to talk about the core of all of the work that I do as a political fixer and as a political fixer team, we all do, it's that we try to grab people's attention. We try to use that moment to just give them a little bit of insight into what's actually happening, that educate people. And then we try to empower them with a call to action to move forward and actually do something. It is really important, especially now that you understand that we still hold the cards. We have the power to do this. And everything that we're seeing on the news with them trying to send in the National Guard and the Marines, those are not signs of strength. Those are signs of weakness. And they absolutely are not going to be able to oppress and silence millions and millions and millions of voices. And okay, fantastic. So I see that Andy's on. Good. I'm so glad you found us, Andy. You didn't miss it much. You're on perfect timing. Okay, so as we're looking at today, a lot of you submitted when you were saying that you wanted to do this training, what you were looking for. A lot of you submitted what exactly it was that you were hoping to get out of the training. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the specifics, but don't worry, I won't call you out by name unless you want to jump into the conversation. But there were some really powerful things here. One, I'm hoping to gain more effective tools than scrolling and posting. Such a good point. I mean, I will say, however, the scrolling and posting does help. We'll talk about that in a bit, but there's so much more that all of us can do. I want to learn how to help others and become amazing to become amazing advocates. I love that. I want to see what I can do to help shift the country back on the right track. This one struck me. Feeling somewhat powerless. I want to regain my power in the current situation. And a lot of you said that you wanted ideas on how to get involved and specific actions as ways that you can effectively express your beliefs. All right, so here's where I want to start today. We talk a lot about political campaigns and advocacy organizations, and a lot of times the focus is on the candidate or the head of the organization or their spokesperson themselves. And that's understandable. It might also be about events that they're holding. But behind the scenes, there are so many different pieces, the apparatus that makes anything go effectively, right? And so, whether that's a huge campaign like for Congress on up, or whether it's a local community center, they all share different things in common. And so we're going to be looking at what exactly those things are because each of you has unique skill sets, unique talents, and some of the things you can do. you can do on your own. You don't need to join or volunteer for any other organization. But my hope is that in addition to that, because we all need a sense of community, that in addition to whatever you decide to do on your own, you start to see where you might fit in as a really important, vital puzzle piece to some of these other organizations doing really great work, large and small, state and federal, also local, and county. There's so many different groups that are out there that would love to have your voice at the table. And a lot of people feel like they don't know where they fit in. So we're going to talk about exactly what those pieces are. But just by being here and know that you want to help others is such a huge part of it. Now we're going to talk about exactly what you can do with that energy. In addition to that, if you are a key member of an organization already, or if you're someone that regularly volunteers for different campaigns and groups, I'm hoping that this will show you some of the opportunities to strengthen those organizations moving forward. We're going to talk about ultimately 7 ingredients, or what I call the 7 pillars of organizing and building movements. And all of us are good at some of them, and all of us either are terrible at others or avoid them altogether. That is totally normal. So while some of you might pick up something that you're like, oh, I think I could do that, and you can contribute to different organizations and campaigns in different ways. Some of you might see this and say, oh, that's what I've been doing wrong. So we're hoping to talk to both sets of you today. Okay, so overall, high level, here's my goals for today. We want to maximize your time. You are excited, you want to get involved. What's a good use of that time? What might be a waste of time? And then more to the point, what might actually be counterproductive? So time is really important. How you can create or locate a community of support, either locally or online, and plug into it. We want to reduce rookie mistakes. All of us make mistakes. It's inevitable. That's what happens when you try anything. But what are some things that are common mistakes that you can avoid? And then we also want to offer a number of things as far as guidance and also reassurance that you can do these things. So let's take 2 minutes and talk about where all of this came from, right? So we're going to be diving into a methodology here, but we'll keep it like it's going to be really easy to follow. But if you want to take notes, there are going to be some specifics that we talk about. Where did all of this information come from? So we're going to spend 2 minutes on that. In Florida in 2008, at the time, Senator Obama carried the state of Florida, what was considered to be a red state, by 50.9%, a squeaker. He defeated John McCain in the state, who received 48.4% of the vote. So very close vote there. And ultimately, as we know, Barack Obama went on to become president. But back in Florida, in the next election for our governor's race and other House seats and congressional seats in 2010, then none other than Rick Scott became governor for the first time. And again, it was extremely close, 48.9%. He defeated Alex Sink, the former state CFO, who had 47.7. So we're talking about 1.2% difference. Very close, but it went the way of the GOP. In 2012, Obama came back into the state and people were watching to see what happened. Now, his numbers were doing well. A lot of people felt like he would perform strongly in the 2012 election, even though he was against a formidable and very charming opponent, Mitt Romney. But what would happen in Florida? Because until that time, no Democrat had won Florida back to back ever in history. And yet, President Obama did just that. Even closer this time, but successful. 50.01%. It doesn't get much closer than that. And then in 2014, things flipped back. Democrats felt like they had the momentum, and yet Rick Scott, even with everything he had done to the state, and you all can only imagine what that is because you now are stuck with him collectively as a U.S. Senator, Rick Scott won 48.2% to against Charlie Crist 47.1. So again, around 1.1%. So a lot of Democratic donors and organizers and bundlers started coming to me because I had been extremely involved in the presidential campaign in '08, and then later in flipping different congressional seats to Democrats in 2012 and in other years. And so they came to me and said, "What is going on? Why can we not win here when Obama is not on the ballot? What do we do?" And my response is, I don't have an answer besides guessing for you, but I can try to find out. So they funded essentially a think tank for me and others to go around the country and study and actually get an answer to this question. How could, in the exact same state with the exact same voter makeup, how is it that a Democrat would come in and win one year and in the very next election they would not? Now, it'd be tempting to say, oh, it's midterms, less people show up. And that's true, but it gets more complicated than that because fewer people show up. That's fine. But why didn't fewer people show up equally on the Republican and the Democratic side? What was missing where Democrats did not come out, or people who supported the Democratic nominee? What was missing? All right. Now, I want to be really clear to say there's a lot of different unique circumstances that apply in any of these races, and the candidates themselves are among them. But what we did find after studying this for years is that when you take the candidates off the table, whether it is a campaign or something that happens in our collective history to move social justice forward, the civil rights movement, the feminist movement, the climate change movement, all these different things, um, they shared different common traits, and when they were missing certain ingredients or one or more of the pillars, then the impact of those movements started to decrease. That actually there was a science or a math to this. So we wanted to put these things together and share them with you, these 7 things, so that you could start to understand a framework of what is going on when we succeed and when we fail. All right, so let's start by defining what we're talking about here. The first thing that we found is that the most successful movements towards change were exactly that. They were movements, whereas it was far less successful to have something just be a campaign, whether that be a political campaign or a media campaign or some sort of individual effort, that there was a difference between a campaign and a movement. And in order for something to be as successful as possible, it needed to elevate to movement status. All right. So we're going to talk about that a little bit in the framework of what's happening today. Right now, there are, hopefully, we hope, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people on their way to express themselves in this No King's Day. However, is this a movement? Not yet. It is a moment. It is a campaign, a very, to all outside eyes, in my professional opinion, beautifully run campaign. It is got tight messaging. They've been providing a lot of resources and training. They've been doing what they can to get as many people engaged as possible. They have penetrated the media cycle, all of these positive aspects. But is it a movement yet? No. But good news, all of you, no matter where you're watching from, you can help make it that way. So let's talk about this. What are the differences between a campaign and a movement? Okay, so campaigns center solely around one candidate, one event, one singular message. They center around one thing. And so the idea is, do you buy into that one message? Do you like that one candidate? Did you attend that one event? Does this seem important enough to you? And the problem is, not only is that somewhat of a small conversation to have, but it's also fleeting. Whatever it is, it's a snapshot in time. This event, this idea, this candidate's race, it is a snapshot in time. So it is by nature smaller. On the other hand, building a movement transcends the smallness. It is larger in the fact that it thinks about big ideas and everyone else. Using the example of a political campaign, A campaign centers around a candidate that talks about themselves, their background, their history, what they believe. A movement will largely center around what they can do for you, what they stand for you, what they have in common with you. It is a bigness to the conversation. When we're looking at what's happening with No Kings today, they have started down that path, which is come out and express your voice. So we're going to talk about why they have not yet transcended to the movement status, but they're on their way. A movement also focuses on what brings us together rather than dividing or negativity. So let's use our lovely friends at the Hillsborough County LGBTQ caucus. It's technically, if I'm being specific, the Hillsborough County LGBTQ plus caucus. Why? Because if you're going to build a movement, it needs to be more inclusive. And years ago, and very wisely in my opinion, the entire LGBTQ movement understood that allies at the table were important and they needed to feel welcomed. And so that inclusivity, you don't have to be gay to be here, essentially, right? It's great that you are. We love you no matter what, but anyone is welcome as long as you support our mission and our ideals. So it wasn't you can only come here if you meet these criteria. It's that we welcome allies and supporters from everywhere. That inclusivity, instead of trying to slice everyone up, is also extremely important to movement building. And the other thing is that movement building has to focus on some sort of positive, constructive change rather than we're not like them or we want to stop this one thing or this just help us get past this next election. The Democratic Party right now is struggling in a number of different ways, though I want to be clear. If you've been following the news lately, we've seen a number of them stepping up in fantastic ways, and they're starting to learn and get their sea legs underneath them, so to speak, in a very unique time. However, the party itself is going to need to adapt. And one of the ways that we're going to need to focus on helping them adapt, it's that we cannot run elections based on just help us get past this one or help us defeat this guy. There has to be a bigger vision. What is that vision? How does it include all of us? And how are you going to get people to buy into it? One is a corporate entity that is designed to help their side collect money and win elections. The other is a movement. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a second and let me just, before we talk more about how we can see whether or not something is a movement, let me put it out there for all of you. If you would like to ask questions to clarify, does this framework make sense to you? The difference between a media messaging or political campaign and something bigger that is a movement. So I want to ask if this makes sense. And then I also want to go one step further. When you think movement, whether it's current or historical or something you've read about, or it could even be something fictitious, what do you think of when you think of the word movement? So feel free to enter that into the chat so that I can check out your answers. And then we're going to keep going and continue talking about the and so what of it all. So we've talked about we need to define a movement, we need to start building movements. Why? What do they do for us specifically? All right. So ultimately, what we're looking for in a movement to define success. So we talked about the differences between campaigns and movements. What defines success? Three P's. Are you ready? Policy, popularity, power. All right. Preferably you want all three, but you can move the needle and be successful by having at least one. So, policy, was your movement actually able to change something in what happened? Were you able to change how we physically can conduct ourselves in this great country of ours, right? Um, the suffrage movement, we talk about that a lot as I have my sister suffragette from Mary Poppins behind me here, right? Um, if we're talking about the suffrage movement, they changed policy. They were able to achieve women's right to vote. So, how are you able to actually physically change something? That's policy, right? Popularity. That does not happen instantaneously. And this, by the way, is the little pillar that so many of you are going to be able to help contribute. How do we move the needle on acceptance? All right, because it is Pride Month and because we are trying to support our LGBTQ community here, then let's think about how the LGBTQ movement was not just about protesters and organizing, though that was really important. The movement also included things like The Ellen Show and Rosie O'Donnell coming out on daytime television, and the television show Will and Grace, and so many other pop culture moments, movies that were created, documentaries, different conversations that were had within families and communities, going to different churches and getting them to shift their policies on accepting and welcoming LGBTQ members. There was so many conversations and media points that needed to happen to shift public perception and popularity of something. Now, I want to spend a moment on this because this is also some place that leadership tends to struggle a bit when they're timid. What happens now is that some leaders will take a poll about something and they will look at that dot on the poll and say, okay, well, this is what the country believes, or this is what my constituency believes, so I've got to live here. No. Achieving political power means this is where people are here. It's my job to get them up here. How do I persuade them? How do I educate them? How do I bring them in? Moving that needle on popularity is movement building. And so creating media and having conversations and accentuating different stories is part of movement building just as much as policy is, right? Because you cannot have one without the other. And the third piece of successful movement building is accumulating power. We need people in elected office that share those values. It's not enough to have people in office that aren't going to stand in your way. We need fighters. We need people that share the values of the movement that you're building. So, are they going to use that power, the power of the microphone, as well as their power of legislation, to actually help you move things forward? In order to successfully build a movement over time, you have to get people in office that share a commitment to vocally supporting your movement. And this is tough right now because it's not always binary, so to speak. Sometimes they will disappoint you and you want them to move all 10 points of your platform forward, and instead they're only willing to do 3. That can be extremely frustrating. And one thing we're having to look at as a family right now, collectively across the country, is do we keep the person in office that is only willing to move it 3 so we can defeat the guy that really wants to move the movement backwards? Or do we shop around for someone that'll give us 5 or 7? Those are the family conversations that we're having right now. And these are fair questions. But the overriding thing that we all need to keep in mind is to be strategic so that no matter what, we don't end up directly or indirectly electing the people that will move us backwards. Really tough things to look at, but when you think about it, it's kind of a quick summary framework of where we're at across the country. Now, before we start pivoting to the actual 7 pillars, I want to answer a question that commonly gets asked at this point of the presentation and training, which is that we're talking about a movement and we're describing something where it's bigger than one person, where it's about everyone else and not just that candidate or that figurehead or that moment, where it talks about a positive future and brings people in, where it's not divisive, it's inclusive. So if that is the case, what is MAGA? Because technically, as a movement, they fail every test. So, what is MAGA? I'm going to give you all a little bit of a chance to weigh in on that, and then I'm going to tell you my opinion strategically as to what I believe MAGA is. So, go ahead and feel free to enter it into the chat. And if you don't feel comfortable, that's totally fine. That's not any forced participation here. But this is a question that I often get asked, which is if the movement is, as we described it, bigger than one person, positive, inclusive, what is MAGA? Because it's certainly not a movement. Okay, so in my opinion, MAGA has checked all 10 boxes for what we and the different personality specialties, what we call a cult. And I have read so much about this. I am not a psychologist. This is not my background, but I have been studying cult behavior now since 2016. And I'm not going to go through all of the signs with you. There are considered to be 10 signs. And if you want a really good article on this, you can actually go to culteducation.com. And there's a really great article on warning signs by Rick Ross. Um, so, up until 2020, it was largely believed that the MAGA group had achieved 9 out of 10 different signs of a cult. I'm going to read you just a few. One is that there's no tolerance for questions or doubt. Two is that there's absolute authoritarianism without any type of meaningful accountability. Number three, they have a constant unreasonable fear of others and the outside world. The list goes on, right? And yes, Andy, you did nail it, right? um, Here's the 10th one, the 10th box that they checked in 2020, which is excluding anyone else who provides them facts, trusting only the leader as the source of truth, even if it means harming themselves or others. So when MAGA stopped wearing masks, stopped protecting themselves from a deadly pandemic, stopped getting vaccines, not because of any science, but because he was telling them to do so, that was showing that was intentionally done, in my opinion, by him to show the ultimate loyalty test, which is that they were willing to put themselves and their families in harm's way to show fealty to a leader. So when we talk about MAGA, we talk about a cult. I want to be really, really clear in saying that everyone who voted for him is not a member of the MAGA cult. And part of what we're going to do today is separate those groups because you cannot treat them the same and you have to speak to them differently. And more to the point, let's bring this cheerier for just a bit. When you're talking about what's happening right now, there is a huge grouping of people that voted for 47 who are able to be persuaded to vote differently. So yes, there are some that we can write off, and we're going to talk about those numbers in a little bit and how to distinguish and how to message the different factions of this, right? But I want to leave you on a positive note. I am not saying that everyone who voted for 47 is part of the MAGA cult. Quite the opposite. We have data to prove that is not the case. And that is good news for us because that means that the numbers truly are still on our side and we can work together and do things, which is why we're all here today. All right. So, I want to keep going here and we're going to dive into our 7. So, if you have any questions, feel free. I can see your chat. Everything's working now. We're using a new software here and so far I'm in love with it. I was just a little bit timid to start it today, but you guys have been great and I can see all your comments and it makes me very, very happy. Okay, so we've got a little bit of a fun coincidence in this training. We started talking about this, and I've done this training a number of times in a number of different locations, and we've obviously adapted it recently with what's going on. But when we talk about the 7 pillars framework, a lot of times we have to rely on historic knowledge or different campaign knowledge that might not be that collective, but we have a really good opportunity today because we're actually going to use what's happening in the New York mayor's race as part of our example. And if you haven't been following it and you don't live in New York, don't worry. It's an easy to follow story and a pretty entertaining soap opera. Now, before I dive in, I want to have a couple of disclaimers here. I am not telling you who to vote for. I'm not telling you how to feel. And when I criticize a different movement or something that is doing work and has not yet become a movement or a campaign, it's not to say that their cause is not worthy. It's not to say that they haven't done some really important work. It's to point out how they could have been or could become even stronger and bigger. It's to make sure that any work that you all do is as strong as possible. So please don't misunderstand me as being harshly critical or trying to persuade you in one way or another as we use these different examples. So again, these 7 pillars, as we talk about them, I want you to think of different campaigns and organizations you get involved in and how they might be able to strengthen any of these areas. But how can you help them strengthen these areas? I know we have some people on here with a technical background, and so I think you might find some pleasant surprises here. And if you've ever wondered why certain things are really great causes, but they just don't seem to go anywhere, you might get a couple of light bulb moments here as well. Okay, we're going to start nerdy. No surprise to anyone who knows me, but one of your first of your 7 pillars is infrastructure. A solid movement has to have a good infrastructure. You have to be able to communicate effectively. You have to organize and plan. Things are usually on very small timelines, whether it's trying to beat deadlines to get legislation in or rushing to an election day. So efficiency is important. And what tends to happen with movements is that they build organically from an idea, and people in the original room are just hoping for success. And so they're worried about planning against failure. We just need to go. We just need to get some stuff out there. We just need to move forward. But a question needs to be asked of any movement, any size, anywhere. What happens when we succeed? How are we physically going to handle this success, right? So some examples of infrastructure, and we're going to send out an email after this training with some information, including a list of all of the different infrastructure pieces, but I'm going to just do a couple of quick ones. Um, Contact management. Who is reaching out to you and how do you reach back out to them? What is your online media and email software to where you can do so effectively? What are you doing to track your accounting and finance and make sure you're completely in compliance with all of the rules and the reports? If you're busy working over here, who do you have that's actually that you can trust that is doing all of the bookkeeping and keeping the receipts and making sure that you're compliant with whatever regulations are there? Those people are important, especially now because this is a common game that some sort of community organization or some sort of campaign will get traction, and then someone will accuse them of financial impropriety or start looking at them or auditing their books as a distraction or throwing a bunch of lawsuits at them. It's the equivalent of, hey, do you have a permit for that, right? So these types of things are not small. There's also volunteer management. If people say they want to help you, where is your source of organizing to make sure that they are put to work doing something that they can do, that you're able to track that appropriately, and that you can give them credit and also relieve them in different shifts if they're doing things like knocking doors, making phone calls, doing texting? How are they going to get the addresses of where to knock or who to call? These are the different pieces that might not sound exciting, but they are vital to any successful movement, especially as they grow in impact and visibility. So if you're someone that has a skill set in any of those softwares, or you understand this, or you are someone with a specific background in business or data or project management or accounting, any of those areas, you could be extremely important by donating some of your time or expertise to these different movements. You could either physically do that, or you could start publishing blogs, reports, videos, TikToks like, hey, everybody, I'm, Jane Smith and I do accounting. Let me tell you some really easy ways to file those FEC reports if you're running for office. There's a lot of different ways to contribute, even on for, and I speak with love because I consider myself among you, for those of us who are very nerdy. All right. So that's your first one, is infrastructure. Your second pillar is successful movements require funding. All right. Successful movements require funding. This is not a greed thing. This is not trying to put capitalism above everything else. But these software suites we just talked about, they charge you, right? So as you get more email people that you want to send something out to, that bill continues to go up. As you start to spread your sphere of influence and you need to get more addresses for doors to knock, that company's going to charge you more. You might need office space. If you're knocking on doors, you need clipboards and water and pens and a good printer. There's so many things that require funding. So yes, I know we're burnt out on the just give $5 here, but when you're looking at these different organizations and you're kind of a little burnt out on the contribution side, then maybe consider giving at least some of your allocated donation budget to some of these localized or smaller groups or these different campaigns. Yes, give to candidates, give to the party if that's what you believe. That is completely up to you. I'm not trying to discourage it, but being able to fund someone and looking into the law, you might even be able to buy something in kind that they need. They might have a wish list of, hey, is there something you need? You look at it, you're like, oh, I can buy the printer for you, or I can donate a case of water. So it could be, especially as burnt out as so many of us are after this last election, that you could go to a different community organization or group or a smaller campaign and say, what can I donate in kind? Do you have a list? So that's another way to do funding. Now, if you are someone who works in one of these organizations, or you've been trying to get your own thing going, or you are trying to help another organization, fundraising can be tricky, especially now. And let me tell you something, the fundraising landscape had already been changing, but something interesting happened in the news this last week. I don't know how many of you saw it, but Apple rolled out a lot of different features that are going to be in the new iPhone software. Why am I talking about this with fundraising? Because one of those features is that you can set up your cell phone to where if you don't know the number, it will prompt the caller to please enter your name and why you're calling before they answer that call. Well, that's going to make fundraising really difficult if you are a campaign that or a community group that is used to doing what we call smiling and dialing, calling different strangers and asking for money. This is going to be extremely game changing with fundraising. Now, I've been in this business a long time. I would argue that that idea of smiling and dialing for fundraising has been out the door for quite some time. Rather, what has replaced it is a lot of grassroots fundraising, small dollar donations, and going to different people that you are introduced to that are larger donors and pleading your case for why they should allocate money to your organization or your campaign compared to others. Now, we could do an entire talk on how to effectively fundraise, but let me just give you a few key takeaways as far as the top mistakes that people make when they are trying to do fundraising. The first thing is they don't ask. There are so many candidates and organizations that I've gone into the door and we started assessing their fundraising prowess. And the first thing that they believe is if we're a worthy enough cause that gets enough media attention, then people will see us and they'll automatically give. And that is not how any of this works. Even some of the most successful organizations that receive national coverage, if you do not specifically say, please give or please donate, people don't think to do it. Some might, but you're leaving most of the money on the table. So being afraid to ask, believing that things will just come to you if you are worthy and you do the work and you keep your head down is actually not true. There's a reason that people ask you for money all the time because it works. Now, there's annoying ways to do that and good ways to do that. You don't want to be annoying. Totally get it. So, what are some ways that you can avoid that? The first thing is talk about what you're giving to the space rather than seeming like like you're someone that takes all the time. So give a quick summary of, hey, this month we did this, and that's thanks to people like you. If you donate today, you can continue that mission, and you tell them what types of things their donation would go towards. If you don't want to sound like an entitled jerk that's spamming them, there's easy ways around that. Don't talk about it like it's something that's owed to you. Well, I'm doing the right thing. You should fund me. No, talk about what you're doing, the work, how it benefits them and others who care about this particular cause or this particular campaign, and what the money would be used for in the future. It's one of the reasons that these kind of boilerplate, Dem fundraising emails are losing a lot of their effectiveness. First of all, we're getting way too many of them, but this is wrong, give us $5. What are you going to do with it? Right? Give me an email where it is close at all to telling us anything with what they're doing with this money. So if you want to make sure that you're effective at fundraising, treat people like people and say, hey, I'm asking for this. Here's why I believe that we can be trusted with it. This is what we've done so far. Brief, very brief. To learn more, click here. This is what we would do with it in the future. And the other quick thing I want to say is a lot of us were raised not to talk about money, that it was rude to ask for something. And especially if you're an advocate and you're used to just doing the hard work, you might feel really uncomfortable asking others for money because it feels like it's asking for yourself. That is a totally normal blockade that so many good, worthy people have. And what I would just ask you to work hard to do, and again, we do a lot of training on this, is understand you are not asking for you. You are asking for help. I know that can be just as difficult. You are asking for help to continue a worthy mission, and you are giving people an opportunity to do something worthy with their donation money. People are not going to give to you if they can't afford to do so. Okay. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of an insight into that very tricky pillar, because money for the sake of money is not what we're advocating. There are right and wrong ways to do this. Um, Andy is adding on to this. He says that point about what are you going to do with the money that you're asking for is a big issue for me. Answer this question: if I give you the money, how does it help fix the problem? It's so important. And I think a lot of us are very frustrated with getting different emails, particularly from certain types of organizations and candidates that are like, just chip in $5. Why? What are you doing besides trying to win? Which that's not enough anymore, right? I mean, the election feels like eons away, though we are going to talk about how to be more effective in the midterms if we have time. Really, we need to be making sure that it's not just about, are you worthy, that kind of thing. All right, I just want to do a couple of quick checks here and make sure we haven't left anybody behind and we're doing good. All right. Okay, here we go. All right, we're going to keep going. Looks like everything technically is working out well. I just don't want to touch any buttons because I'm so scared of messing it up. Okay, so um, third pillar, access to the system. Now, this is where we're going to use our New York mayor's example. For those of you that haven't been following, the New York mayor's primary is happening right now. The early voting, I believe, starts Tuesday, and the actual election is, I want to say, the 26th, 24th. That would be Tuesday, the 24th, I believe. So, they'll verify it if you're in New York City. So this is the Democratic primary, but for all intents and purposes, the way that it looks now is that whoever wins the primary of the New York mayoral race will likely become the next New York City mayor. This is a big deal for a lot of reasons. Eric Adams was not exactly the finest selection that New York City ever made for so many different reasons. Okay, so why bring this up? Because right now, there are a number of candidates running. The landscape is changing pretty regularly as we get through towards the end. They have ranked choice voting. So there are things that are unique about the New York City voting system. But here are two figures, while nothing against the other very worthy candidates who are running. I want to talk about two of them in particular. One of them is former Governor Andrew Cuomo. He is the establishment candidate. And again, this is not me trying to influence your vote in any way. I'm going to state some facts. Andrew Cuomo was involved in some different Department of Justice investigations for allegedly being involved in a doctored COVID report. Andrew Cuomo has been accused by at least 12 different women of either harassment or an abusive workplace. And two of those cases moved forward and were found credible so far. Some of them are still pending, some of them were settled. And in addition to that, there were other questionable issues having to do with finances. So this is a guy who is, let's be generous here, old school way of doing politics. The means justify the ends. He is extremely experienced. He's a former governor looking to run for mayor. And so, despite everything going on, a number of New York elected officials, whether they were citywide or U.S. senators like Gillibrand, they endorsed Cuomo, standing behind the establishment candidate that they know. Now let's talk about a second candidate. Again, there are a number of worthy ones. Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani is someone who has served as a state assemblyman, and he was considered to be a long shot candidate. First of all, he has labeled himself as a democratic socialist, which is a phrase that a number of people are taught to fear. He is running on a platform of trying to make housing more affordable, provide greater access to childcare, those types of issues. And he is looking to build a movement. Now, the idea of him winning seemed like a long shot months ago. I mean, he wasn't even really registering on anyone's radar. But there are different things that he has been able to successfully do to where his campaign before our very eyes, in my opinion, is transcending from campaign to movement. And if I were to guess or assess based on the studying that I've done, and again, I'm not a New Yorker and I'm not advocating voting one way or the other, but it's not just about, hey, we want prices to come down and for things to be more affordable. Almost every candidate says that, but it's become a race about who do we want in charge of us? The establishment candidate with baggage who might be imperfect, but we know what we're getting. At least we know he's a fighter, versus a guy with less experience, but has dedicated himself to a different way of doing things that is not the corporate donor establishment way of doing things. And this question is essentially what's in front of New Yorkers instead of who do you like better, candidates A, B, C, or D. It has become a larger question. Now, let's go back to that third pillar. We talk about access to the system, and this is when some people get a little bit bristly. In order to achieve success as a movement, you have to have some people from your movement have access to the system. And people ask, why would you want to be part of a broken system? Because of a number of reasons. All right. Number one, not saying that the system is not flawed, but if you have no one involved in it, then you are not connected to what is happening and the resources that are available and what people who are members of that organization are thinking before these things happen, right? In other words, you need information, you need intelligence, and you need to win over other people who are members of that group. So if you're looking at doing something, now the easiest example of this is, your local or state or what have you Democratic Party, but there are a ton of other examples. If you're someone who's involved in climate change, then people need to be going to the different city, county, and business board meetings that they can that are talking about different points of action that might impact the climate. If you care about climate change, but no one is involved in your county board meetings, then how are you going to know they're about to build something that's going to pollute your local river, right? So it's not just about party versus not party. It's that this entire system that we're talking about, you can't penetrate it and change it just from the outside. Now, we also have to make sure that if possible, you have some of your people leading these different establishments, whether they be elected positions, business board members, or people in the party. You need your people there so that when you're not in the room, when it's not a public conversation, your issues are still being represented at the table. So it's critical to try to get some of your people at the table where the decisions are happening behind closed doors. And the other thing too is you can diffuse this idea that you're this terrible, nebulous, monstery enemy if your people, so to speak, are in the room all the time. If you self exclude, you become a caricature. You are the other. You are something scary and to be avoided. But if your group, your movement, has members at different events and meetings and on different boards, it's like, wait, that doesn't make sense. I know someone that's a member of such and such group or such and such marginalized community, and they seem like totally nice, normal person to me. So diffusing that caricature, we cannot self-exclude. In this case, with the New York mayor's race, this is a perfect illustration. This guy is a democratic socialist. It's why I chose the example for today. He could have easily run as an independent and just declared himself a socialist. But then something very important would have happened. The big turning point for Mamdani's numbers. I have a friend named Mumdani, so I'm struggling and I keep doing that. It's Mamdani, M-A-M, so forgive me on that. But Mamdani's numbers started to take a positive turn. They had been ratcheting up slightly because his campaign has knocked over 500,000 doors and he's been putting in the work. But the big breakthrough came during the New York City Democratic debate. Now, if he had not registered as a Democrat, if he was not part of that establishment, part of that system, he wouldn't have been on the stage. And so people that were watching, and it was a significant number, over 700,000 people tuned into that debate, many of them from the New York area. People are paying attention to this race. If he's not on the stage, then regular people can't hear his side. They can't consider him as a choice. So again, not arguing that the system isn't flawed, And yet, the painful reality of where we are in movement building is we still have to have people who access it. Okay, so does anyone have any comments or questions on accessing the system? Because I know this is a little bit of a spirited topic, especially now, because it's so tempting for us to be like, I don't like those guys. I don't want to play with them anymore. And I have those days as well. I promise you, sometimes even more so because I get to hear the idiotic conversations happening behind the scenes for some of these different lovely parties. But at the end of the day, there is a party structure, and so accessing it becomes important. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye out for your questions, but let's keep it moving. We've hit the halfway mark and we are already talking about 3 of our 7 pillars. We're going to keep going and talk about the rest of the pillars, and then we're going to pivot into messaging. All right. And Nicholas is saying, I like what you said there. We still need that in. Yeah, we got to have the in. It's always, unfortunately, still ever present and important. Okay, principal figure. Let's talk about this. Every successful movement requires a principal figure. Now, a lot of times that can be the candidate. It could be someone who just becomes known as being associated with a particular cause or set of values, and it can shift. You can have multiple principal figures. What do we mean by a principal figure? This is someone who is a personification of your movement. They become synonymous with whatever movement you are trying to move forward. They can control and lead the conversation regionally or nationally to try to actually provide a face to the issues you're talking about. They make the movement less obtuse. They can actually relate stories and personal things, and they are a go-to source for the media to become representative of the movement. But this is another reason that the principal figure is so critical. Things change, especially in this political climate. Things can happen and shift rapidly. And as things happen in the news, as things need to be addressed, as a current event arises, a principal figure becomes someone that can go really quickly to an amplifying device, whether that be social media, a media set of interviews, a microphone somewhere, and they can clarify and steer the movement to continue to adapt. Okay, so this could be if something negative happens that could reflect poorly on their movement, or it could be if something positive happens, right? Andy asked, do I think Democratic Socialist is still the death knell that it used to be? I don't. And, I will largely credit AOC for that. I believe that she has been doing the hard work of putting herself out there and trying to redefine what that can mean. And I feel like a lot of people gave her a lot of grief for doing exactly what we just said, which is being part of the system, running for committee chairs, giving them the votes that she felt in her conscience she could give the establishment in exchange for other things. And I think that she is rising quickly as a principal figure of that movement. And when you look at her and you hear her speak, then a number of people, the comments that I read and the articles I've read are, wait, that sounds like it makes sense to me, right? That it calms people to hear her rather than it sounding like crazy talk, right? So again, kind of proving a great question, Andy, and it illustrates both points, access to the system, but also principal figure. Um, I think, to be fair, we all know that Bernie had a heavy hand in kicking into that door and starting to open it on his own. However, she has definitely taken that torch. And when you compare that to other people who consider themselves members of that faction, they have not necessarily taken that baton and run with it in a way that's as effective. Okay, so when we're talking about this principal figure, we started talking about the No Kings movement and how it's not yet a movement, and this is one of the things as to why. Who's in charge of No Kings? Don't tell me Indivisible. I understand technically who's in charge, that there's different groups coming together. I know the technical answer, but who do you think of with No Kings, right? And so let's play this out. Now, I think today is going to be largely a very effective day. Let's start with the negative. If something negative happens at one of these events, who is the media going to run towards to get comments on what happens to diffuse any tensions? If there is no principal figure, the media will run to the most sensational person they can find to add flames to the story. That's how legacy media works. It is based on clicks and views, right? But if there is a known principal figure, they would go to that person because that person is the clicks and the views. They are the expected get, right? Now, Ms. Pronounce your name for me. Is it Gilzis? Oh, Jesus. Okay. I forgive me. I can't pronounce your handle there. But us, the answer is us. Okay. We are members of the movement, but we still require someone to step up and speak for us on a regular basis, right? And this person needs to have a viewpoint that is shared largely with the movement. They need to have an authentic personality and persona. They need to offer something of value to represent the people of the movement, and they have to be out there. They have to produce regular content. Jesus, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, we as the people can be part of the movement. We can all speak on our own behalf, but someone needs to rise up and become a voice to steer that movement. So it might be accidental, it might be purposeful, but we do hunger for that leadership. It is a natural instinct that we have. And in fact, we're seeing that now. Who is going to emerge as leaders of these different movements and factions? It can be more than one person, but a faceless, nameless group is not as effective. One of the more recent examples of this is Occupy Wall Street. Occupy Wall Street had a number of fantastic accomplishments. They changed the national conversation. They received untold media attention on an issue that was considered a fringe issue before then, which is wealth inequality and what was happening with corruption and capitalism. But no one stepped in as the lead, right? No one stepped in as the voice of Occupy Wall Street to keep that movement going, to take the meetings. Let's say that you are advocating for whatever issue it is, right? Whatever issue, we're going to use income inequality. And the other side says, you know what? We are in charge of tax policy right now. We agree with a lot of what you're saying. You've made some good points. We would like to meet with you. Who are they meeting with? Who is going to negotiate on behalf of this organization? Who is going to advocate? Who is going to help craft policy that moves it forward? So if attention is the goal, that's not a movement, that's a moment. But if you're trying to legislate, if you're trying to achieve power, if you're trying to train people to run for office and get to become experts in this issue, there has to be leadership to get them the rest of the way. So Luis asks, is it a movement you see that can become more organized, or is it to spread out? Okay, great point. Kind of both. So it needs to be organized and have a hub. There needs to be a place that people know where to go. In the age of information, think of it as your central website, right? We're going to use that as an example. You need to have a hub for your organization that people know to go to these people, this location, this address, this website. But also, if you're going to be successful, you have to propagate that messaging as broadly as possible. So that could be social media posts, satellite offices, events in other areas, pop culture data, which we're going to talk about in just a bit, content, whether that be produced content or spur of the moment content that is more raw and grassroots. The ideas need to spread. The action needs to be controlled centrally. So I'm going to say that again. The ideas and values need to be spread. There has to be a command center. If someone's like, yes, I believe in what you're doing, put me to work, where do they go? Who do they sign up with? Who decides what the best use of that person's time is? Who gives them their proverbial marching orders? That needs to be centralized. And that's the big disconnect that we see with some of these pop-up grassroots moments, is that they're, and we'll talk about some other opportunities that they have. And again, this is not bashing what's been done. What they've been able to do with No Kings is phenomenal. How do they move it forward? And some of you can have a hand in that. But bigger, the No Kings movement, or the moment so far, is reflecting what so many of us feel. Whether you associate formally with No Kings, or you help out with some of what we're doing at Political Fixer, or you're working on your own organization, or you're volunteering for a campaign, what is it that you can do to make that message spread further and to get them more organized at the hub, right? So hopefully that helps you with clarification. And it's why it's a tough issue, because so many people, this happens, the best moments seem to happen organically and they grow kind of out of nowhere. And no one has thought through these next pieces. But it's not too late for them. They have tons of attention and time and hopefully resources. They can still be highly, highly effective. All right, and that brings us to something that it's a natural segue, which is that the fifth pillar is pop culture saturation. We have to change the conversation and enter the conversation not just behind closed doors and not just in spaces that feel exclusive. Okay, so what do I mean by that? It's one thing to have something in a board meeting or a congressional hearing or even on a 24-hour news channel. We'll talk more about that in a moment. It's another thing if it becomes a punchline in a late night talk show or mentioned at a sporting event or woven in to music or talked about and made into a meme or a dance on social media. If you can penetrate pop culture and become more widely known, your viewpoint being more widely known and accepted, there is a power to that. We're going to talk about both the positive and the negative reasons why. Okay, on the positive side, we need more people to vote, donate, volunteer, pay attention, talk to their family members, repost, retweet, all of these things who are not typically engaged. I just did a talk on Wednesday and we talked a lot about disengaged voters. And it might surprise some of you to know that out of voters, people actually casting their vote, 20% of them, 1 out of 5, say that they either follow politics rarely or not at all. And that goes across party lines, Republican, Independent, Democrat. 20%. It's almost split evenly, a third, a third, a third. So by penetrating pop culture, we can persuade different disengaged voters with kind of showing them that something is normal or something is right or the other side is foolish or the other side is mean. We need to penetrate the messaging in normal pop culture in order to reaffirm our position and switch that popularity like we were talking about, but also to capture disengaged voters. They're not going and watching MSNBC before they vote. They're watching late night. Your comment made it into the joke. Your viewpoint is making it into the song. Your artist says something after he or she performs. That got to someone that in a way that a newspaper editorial just absolutely cannot. On the negative side, batting defense for just a second, political media is not our friend. I do not care how liberal or progressive you believe an outlet is. If it is a corporate news outlet, it is there for one reason, and that is to earn money. All right. And even some of the most successful, some of the most trusted names, if they believe, I'm not saying everyone, but we just saw this with Jake Tapper, if they believe they will make money bashing a certain individual or belittling a certain campaign or trashing a certain viewpoint, or if they believe they could lose their job if they speak up on behalf of a certain group, if they say the other side, if they correct someone on the air that gives misinformation. This is corporate media. It is for a paycheck. Sponsors are involved. They are not your friend. We have to create our own media. But the good news is that we have the ability to do that and be even more effective than some of these legacy media outlets. Now, we're going to spend a bit of time on this because a number of you said that the reason that you wanted to get involved is to take specific action, figure out how to engage with people, how to be effective at honing your skills at communicating and creating things. A number of you came from TikTok and you want to be effective at that. Let me give you some words of encouragement and then some techniques, and then we'll do the final pillars here. Okay. I pulled the data from Adweek. They publish every month. Well, really, they publish every week, but I pulled the monthly data. They publish how the ratings are going for different news outlets, and these numbers are going to, I hope, pleasantly surprise you, because I know sometimes it feels like we are just slogging through quicksand trying to get the media to talk about what we want. And I'm going to circle back to that point in just a second. Fox News is still number one, though they are dropping. They had an 11% decrease in their primary demographic. Everyone believes in this media industry, just so you know, that the primary demographic is the highest purchasing power demographic for the ads. And so that is the ages of 25 to 54. So when they say the demo or the primary demographic, they mean people between the ages of 25 and 54. So they were down in viewership overall at Fox News, 4%, and in the coveted demo, then they were down 11%. But even so, even down, they're still king of the mountain right now, right? Okay, so Fox News had about 2.5 million total viewers, and on average, about 260,000 viewers of their demo during prime time. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Fox News, the largest news channel in our nation during prime time, the demo of ages 25 to 54, 262,000. Think about a TikTok video. Think about something that goes viral. How many people is it reaching? Right now, a decent TikTok video that hits the airwaves and gets shared or gets, someone stitches in or what have you is getting way more than 262,000 views. The reason that so many people piled onto TikTok and other social media sources with wanting to shut them down, part of this was led by these organizations that are completely getting lapped as far as content. Our power on these social media platforms is much greater collectively than the biggest corporate news outlets in the nation. All right, let's talk about MSNBC. All right, MSNBC is ranked number 2 right now, and in prime time, they're pulling in around 877,000 viewers, less than a million people. You want to know why they're not able to change the race. We can get upset with coverage and it's not progressive enough, and I can't believe they're not talking. People aren't watching. They could say the right things. They could do 100% what we would want them to do. It will not change the outcome of an election. It just will not. Can they be harmful? Yes, they can put stuff out there that's false or can scare people. Can they be helpful? Yes, they can clarify information. You can have people that provide useful information. And then what happens when someone on one of these outlets provides something that's extremely useful? We're going to slice it up into clips and we're going to put it on social media. That's what's going to happen, right? Now, Andy brings up a good point. Says, I guess I need to increase my 177 followers on TikTok. Yes and no. Listen, it's okay if you don't have a following that is huge right now. But if that's the case, let us know and we could try to help you with that by sharing some of your work and things like that. But you don't have to be the source. You don't, you, Andy, or others, don't worry if you don't have a large following. The bottom line is that you have a following of people that trust and like you and what you have to say. And that effort becomes exponential. So if you feel comfortable talking about an issue, if you bring up a good point, then ask your community online to share it and to create their own content to amplify that point. Collectively, you, one person, you don't need to reach to, 877,000 viewers. That's not what I'm saying. One person didn't make those views happen on MSNBC. They had a team. They had producers, they had people that advertised the show, they had Rachel Maddow and Lawrence O'Donnell and so many different people, right? All of us collectively can start creating, boosting, sharing, stitching, commenting on this media to try to get the overall number higher because more people are paying attention to that. So let's use what has been happening recently in LA because it's a beautiful example of this going right. The media, at first, including some, known outlets like the New York Times, tried to both sides what was happening with the National Guard troops being deployed, was saying that the protesters were violent, with all of these different fallacies and false narratives. They were trying to both sides it and make it sensational. And oh my gosh, there's fires everywhere in LA. What happened? The people on the ground shared social media videos of what was actually happening on the ground. The people on the ground shared social media videos saying that actually, no, here is footage of the police department making things violent, and they shared those clips. Right? They shared stories about what brought them there to begin with. Stories of elementary school graduations being raided by ICE and so many other heartbreaking stories. And then they shared other related stories, that it's not just the immigrant community and all of these women and children and families that are being hurt by this. Here's photos of our National Guardsmen and women laying on the floor with no supplies and being deployed, but being treated like garbage. And then what did we all do? We shared them. We added comments. We did our own video takes on what we saw. We wrote articles and social posts about how important this is. And you changed the narrative. Think about that. That is extremely powerful. You had an entire corporate entity that really wanted this to be a violent, fiery protest, right? Because there's nothing that a corporate news camera loves more than just showing chaos, right? They wanted the chaos, and you force their hand. You want chaos, point it at the police, right? You want this story, it's not true. You want to actually see what's happening, we'll give you what's happening. Oh, you want to report on this, here's other things you need to know. You changed a corporate media cycle. You collectively stood up to a tyrannical government that was trying to orchestrate this false narrative. You stood up for a community that has just felt belittled and attacked, and you won the narrative. Not only that, you are going to be part of the reason collectively that this pushback is happening, right? People were more motivated to get out there and protest, to post, to stand up to them. And that's partly because of all of you amplifying and creating and attaching your own voice to that content, right? So let me just give you one more number and then we'll move on from this to tell you how, right? And I hope that this is making sense to you, as I want to drive home that these are not small things that we're doing, that changing narrative is a big part of the game right now. But we talked about the MSNBC being the #2 ranked news channel in the nation, and that in prime time they had around 877,000 viewers. But if you want to talk about those demo viewers, those sacred demo of age 25 to 54, right? 73,000. 73,000. Now, I'm not saying that the other viewers aren't extremely important as well. What I'm saying is, you want to talk about a doable number. I don't care if you have 1,000 followers or less on TikTok or whatever. Over time, you can get your posts to start traveling and amplifying and getting comments and things. You'll get to something that has 73,000 likes, views, what have you. I promise you. If that is something that you are trying to do and you're trying to build the audience, you can get a higher rating than the top demo of MSNBC. And if you want to talk about what was happening in their daytime ratings, 49,000. 49,000. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that. How do you get people to pay attention to what you're doing? What makes it worth it? Okay. There are tricks to this trade. There are. And our TikTok account, it did not grow accidentally. First of all, we had a lot of help. TikTok has been extremely accommodating with the type of content that we created. We had to build a level of trust with them to show that we were not creating irresponsible political content. That was part, I can say something and be outraged. I can say something that's controversial, but what I can't do is go on there and just spew conspiracy theories and falsehoods and things like that. They were very clear when they communicated with me from TikTok. They don't want to be the next Facebook. Apologies to people who still rely on Facebook. We try to post there, but they make a lot of money at Facebook for spreading violence and conspiracy theories. TikTok didn't want that. So having content that you take the time to research that is truthful builds trust, not just with you, but with the platform. And that algorithm is going to start to shift in your favor as they see that you're talking about an issue that is difficult, But at the same time, you're doing it and it's not getting flagged for inappropriate content. That alone will start to shift your algorithm. The other thing is that your videos, and we're getting into the meat of the matter. We're not going to just talk about platitudes, but you want to talk about how to actually get more views on any social media platform right now. I'm specifically focusing on TikTok for this focus of the conversation because they have been extremely shown to be able to grow accounts rapidly. Others over time, when you cross post, absolutely you can grow them. But a second thing to keep in mind is there are inflammatory words that will cause your video to get more scrutiny. It will cause it to not take hold as much in the algorithm, and it will also cause possibly for your video to get held and have to get manually reviewed. And that's going to delay your ability to respond and grow your audience. And one of those words, it's not going to surprise you to hear, is Trump. Now, many of you who watch the TikTok live or who know me from other things, you might notice I always call him 47. There are three reasons for that. Number one, he is a narcissist, and narcissists hate it when you do not give them any glory. And so by calling him 47, that is my little middle finger to him every single time to not give him what he wants. Number two, I mentioned it before, I'm a data nerd. To me, he is not the problem. He is an embodiment of a problem. This is something I like to look at analytically. To me, he is just a number. He is just a part of the bigger equation of how do we fix politics in America. But the third reason, that is a very practical reason, is my videos don't get flagged. My videos don't get flagged. So you come up with your own name, be mindful of what it might be, but understand if you're recording videos and you say Trump over and over again, they are far more likely to get flagged. All right. Now we've talked about what to not do, which is not to say inflammatory, unverified things or spout conspiracy theories. Be mindful of the language that you use, any type of sensitive words like essay. Hopefully you're getting what I'm implying here. That's what to not do. But what do you do to grow that audience? So the first thing is, let's talk about the content, and then we'll talk about the call. On the content, you want to try to do something that is compelling. People are going to decide whether or not they watch your video in about 1.5 to 3 seconds. So you're going to want to make sure that you say something catchy and compelling at the beginning, some sort of hook before you even introduce yourself. Do not waste those precious 1.5 to 3 seconds with, "Hi, I'm so and so." I do not care, right? The average viewer does not care. I'm going to talk about what's actually happening with those ICE raids right now. Oh, you have my attention, right? Compelling. Grab them immediately. Then take time to introduce yourself. Then go on with the content. Your content needs to go somewhere. You need to take them on a story very quickly, 3 to 5 minutes. So you want to have them have some sort of compelling story. This is what I'm going to tell you. This is what's happening. Here's how we know, and here's what you can do about it, or here's why I'm sharing it, or here's where you can go for more information or something. Take them on a journey, not just, make sure you have a story that you're telling, a 1, 2, 3. This is what I'm going to tell you and why you should care about it. Here is the thing, and here's, if you care about this issue, what you can do next. And then you're going to do a call. And if you like this content, or if you found this interesting, or you think this is important, or whatever your hook is, right? Whatever the purpose was of you doing this video, please like and share this video so other people can see it. I know a lot of people feel really cringy when they say something like and share my channel, right? I understand that. We have grown up now in the age of influencers. There's things that we love and things that are kind of cringe, right? But when you say it like so that other people can find this information, so we can share this far and wide, so the truth gets out there. Now it's not about you. Ooh, look how we came full circle in movement building. It's not just about you, it's about the collective, right? So if you want to grow your channel, ask people to do it. Again, it seems silly, but we have so much information, and a lot of us are just sitting there on the couch, lean back, scrolling, right? And it's like, if you say the words, "Please like and share this," oh, sure, yeah, okay, it jolts me into doing that. Right? This is not something that is light. We have seen dramatic spike. We did a lot of testing on this on our channel. And if I asked people to do something, the spike in that action was at least 20 to 30%. So make sure you do a call at the end of your video. Okay. I know we're covering a lot of information here. That was our fifth pillar that we kind of spent a lot of time on with engaging pop culture. Some of you might not be content creators who feel comfortable on camera, and that's okay. Amplifying other people's content is one way you can get involved. Do you write? Because if so, you could do an anonymous blog under a pseudonym. Maybe it's inappropriate for you to do something because you have a position of visibility in your workplace or a conflict. As long as you're not violating any ethical codes that are going to get you in trouble at work or any laws because maybe you're supposed to be an impartial judge or something, right? Then you probably shouldn't start your own kind of political blog. But it doesn't need to be about everything. It doesn't need to be about politics at all, actually. What we're finding is that if you start talking about or posting or blogging or podcasting where you can stay behind a microphone without your face showing, if you start talking about any topic and then you drip in different elements of politics into that, it can be very powerful. So let's say you're a teacher and you're talking about different techniques about how to reach uh, kids who are struggling to read. You could then bring up the fact that, and also our state's funding for testing for reading and reading supplies for teachers has dropped by this much. So make sure that you are finding out if your state rep voted in favor of this low pay for teachers or not. There's ways that you can tie things into everyday actions, and you don't even have to tell them who to vote for. You do not have to be angry. You can just present something that's important and say, listen, go and do the research on this specific topic. See this bill and how they voted. Ask them how they feel about this. Look for people who promise to stand up for this group. So when you're creating content, it doesn't always have to be political content. We have dedicated our channels to that. But even then, I'm still always talking about Star Wars, football, and whatever else. So make sure you throw in a little bit of yourself and your personality as well. That will also help grow that channel. Okay, we're getting to the point where we're in the final home stretch here, where we're going to do the last two pillars, and then we're going to talk exactly about what your plan of action is from here. Your number 6 pillar is engaged community. Engaged community. You have to have a group of people in a movement that are willing to do things that you've asked them to do, and it has to extend beyond voting and donating money. Give them something to do. Let's go back to our New York mayor's race. One of the reasons that Mamdani was able to get so many people mobilized is his campaign put a lot of people to work, sign waving, getting people to knock on doors, doing phone calls. They have reached over 500,000 voters in a mayor's race. Now, I get it, it's New York City, but that's still extremely impressive. And yes, that helps the campaign. It helps the candidate. It helps talk to the voters. But bigger than that, it gives people something to do, right? I will say that this is one of the mistakes, in my opinion, that the Obama movement made, and why I believe he suffered such a loss in the midterms between 2008 and 2010. He did really well in 2008, and then all of his fancy people that were part of the Obama team got dressed in their suits and they went to work in DC, and they're like, "Don't worry, we got this, kids." At least that's what it felt like to so many of us that worked around the country. We're like, okay, yeah, but how can we help? No, 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 this is big kid government now, right? And people that were in the administration at the time, like Rahm Emanuel and all of those, they weren't guys asking for us to help. They weren't making us feel included. They didn't give us something else we could do, like share this information or make sure you talk to your neighbors about the Affordable Health Care Act. They didn't engage us. And that was a missed opportunity. And if you don't consistently engage your community, then they don't feel like a part of it. They're going to walk away. They might still root for your success, but you've lost the power of the people of your movement. So it's really important that you engage your community. What are some different ways that you can do that? All right. You can have some sort of what we call a chain of participation event. Like, hey, help us reach this many people with this bit of information. You can have some sort of volunteer event or some sort of volunteer drive. We're going to be working in this neighborhood here to show how, how we can help our local elementary schools by rebuilding this playground. Are you here with us, right? We're going to be talking about funding for education and funding for schools. Come here and help us, right? Make things, right? We kind of tease people that make the pink hats or had the different bracelets or have the different shirts, but whether you make it or you buy it, this shows a solidarity. And it's a small way that no matter where I live on the planet, I can feel like I'm with you because other people are doing the same thing. And depending on where someone lives and the environment they are in today, that could be an extreme act of bravery and defiance. You feel empowered by saying, "You're not going to silence me. I'm going to wear this shirt that has pride lettering on it, or, equal rights now, or, immigrants are people too, or whatever it is." That type of thing really can connect a community, as small as it might feel. Give them something to attend that is not a meeting or a fundraiser. Give them something to attend that is not just a meeting or a fundraiser. A local picnic, some sort of day out, a karaoke night. Hey, we're all going to meet here and have coffee. Whatever it is, this is what we did with Cocktails for Kamala. It gave people something they could do where they could get together and talk about something and feel like they're a part of it. Meetings are important as well. Meetings are boring. It doesn't matter. It's a universal truth, right? And so we don't want it to always feel like homework. The other thing is, if it is a meeting and there's a routine to it, there's minutes, there's certain things, there's a rhythm to it. If someone comes in who's new, they don't always necessarily feel part of it. In fact, quite the opposite. They feel like a lot of this is passing them by. They don't really understand what's going on. The fellowship of it all is really important as part of these events. So you want to create these safe spaces, give people fun places to meet, and then use that as an opportunity to strike up conversations. Also, you can have competitive situations. You can say, all right, we are going to stack up our unions versus our community officials here, and we're going to see who can get the most likes on their videos to raise awareness about this issue. You can create competitive things within your community that are fun, that really acknowledge the effort and like show a benchmark and show a goal. Other types of participation is you can give people a way to direct energy that might not even have anything to do with your organization. If you see that your community is upset by something and they want to do something, or you see that they want to get involved, then you can give them something to do, even if it doesn't directly benefit your organization. Here's a couple of quick examples about that. Hey, listen, we all saw this on the news. We're upset as well. We're all going to be writing a letter to the editor of this newspaper and demanding that they tell the other side of the story. Or something more positive. Yes, we saw this candidate. They're amazing. Would you like to sit with us and do some postcard messages to different voters asking them to get involved in the race? So there's different things that you can do to direct energy of your community. And that, again, it's better that they are with you, guided energy, than left out there alone, not knowing what to do with that energy. Okay, we're in the home stretch, everybody. Seventh pillar, short-term attainable goals, what we call STAGs, short-term attainable goals. Not everything has to do with a fundraising thermometer or the upcoming election. We have to give people things that they can accomplish, and we have to celebrate those accomplishments. Okay? So what are some different things that you can do that are short-term attainable goals? Changing a story or getting the word out there is one of them. Try to make sure, if you're someone who's guiding that or participating in that, that you have metrics to it. Like, we had 500 people share this video that showed the truth of what was happening at the protest. Or they talked about us on the air in this certain news publication. Good job, everybody. Um, Not related to media. What can you do that has to do with goals? We signed up this many people who committed that they are going to vote in the next election. We got this many people to sign our values pledge. We had this many people take our literature and say they would consider this viewpoint when we stood out in the corners of shopping malls and grocery stores over the weekend. We canvassed this many houses. What is your short-term attainable goal? Why is it important? And what difference is it making? All right. When you convey that to people, it keeps them further engaged. And it reminds them that their small action, though, if you've ever knocked doors for a campaign, especially in summer or early fall, it does not feel like a small contribution, I can assure you. But no matter how small your contribution might feel sometimes, when you are part of something bigger, it creates a team mindset. It also shifts things into positive mindset. And I would also say this is really important to some of us who are very online. We've all seen this. Do not be the person that rains on that parade and says, like, okay, sure, you knocked on all those doors, but they probably won't even vote, right? Or, yeah, you got them mentioned on the newspaper, but there's still corporate media who hates us. Celebrate the victories. It is really important. Listen, those of us who are in advocacy, we know how hard and ugly this is almost every day. We have seen more failures, more heartbreaks, more disappointments, more people who disappoint us than we can care to mention. Why? Because we're in the role of advocacy. That's our job. But we're the minority. Most people, to build a movement, they're not changing their careers for this. This is not what they're going to do every day. They are here for touch point participation. They are here and there. They're going to come sometimes. Sometimes they're not. They're going to vote sometimes. Maybe sometimes they won't. They're going to agree with you sometimes. Maybe sometimes they won't. You need them to feel positive about what you're doing as much as possible. It needs to feel like a positive, fun place to be, or at least a comforting place to be, even when things are going really poorly. If it feels like homework, if everybody's always arguing, if it feels like it's exhausting, everybody's always negative, if everybody's always angry, that is not going to attract people from the outside. And we need them. That is the difference between hanging out with a bunch of friends and maybe swapping a drink and some more stories and saying how tough this is. That happens on your family time with your peers. But day to day, we have to put on the armor. And part of that armor, and I know this is going to make some people cringe, but part of that armor is hope and positivity. We need to remind people that even though things can get dark, we still believe that it is possible to affect major change. If it wasn't, what are we all doing here? Right? What are we all doing here, especially on a beautiful Saturday? Okay, I want to hear from you as we close up. I want to know what questions you have, what specific things you would like me to answer. Was there something you were hoping that you would get from today that we haven't quite covered? Whatever it is, please feel free to ask. I intentionally left some time here. This is your space, and I would like to hear from you. I also, while you guys are forming your questions and while you're thinking of things, I just want to sincerely thank you for taking time out of this. Here's what I hope that you're taking away from this. We talked about these 7 pillars for a reason. One is I want to kind of shift some mindset on how we win, not what feels emotionally good at the time. I do a lot of content. I could easily create and probably get more views on content that bashes what people do wrong. But that's not going to help us win. That's going to cause more people to tune out and to feel hopeless or like both sides are the same. We have to be strategic with what we put out there and have a goal in mind, not just do what we feel in that moment. I see some thank yous and some hearts. You're more than welcome. If you would like to talk about getting this training to your community or your organization or your group, we can customize that for you. This is what we do. We can go more into one particular topic, or we can actually sit there and do exercises with people and get them to practice. Um, if we have a minute or so, I want to kind of put this into practice before we kind of disband. You're more than welcome. Um, I want to, a lot of you asked, what can I do with my messaging? What can I create? I want to give you one more bit here before I let you go. I promised you this will take about 2 minutes, but it's really important. And Andy, you're more than welcome as well. So glad you could join us. Um, I mentioned this in a meeting that or a presentation that I had earlier this week, and we're going to be doing more content on this. But as we're talking about today, as we're talking about these critical issues, I just want to do one quick exercise with you take a couple of notes quickly, and then we'll make sure you can get on with your beautiful Saturday. And again, if you're going to No Kings, please make sure that you are practicing safety and that you raise that voice and give them hell in the most peaceful, awesome way ever. Okay. I'm going to give you what we call the 4 S's for communicating. Now, I want to say that you don't need all 4 S's in one piece of communication, but if you're wanting to know like how to talk about some of these complex issues and how to make sure you're contributing positively to the discourse, let me give you the 4 S's, and then I'm going to give you what they mean and a quick example. And this will take less than 5 minutes, and then we'll definitely let you go. And I'll definitely let me answer Leah's question. How consistent do we need to be with our messaging? Daily, one time a week, weekday versus weekends? Here's what I'll say, Leah, is ask yourself why you're creating the messaging to begin with. If you are someone that is looking to try to cross a threshold of messaging, like for example, I believe on TikTok, you have to have 10,000 followers before they pay you or something like that, right? If you're looking to cross a threshold, consistency is critical. And if you want the best performing numbers, we have found that weekend numbers tend to be very, very low. Not only that, the time of day that we post tends to matter. If I post somewhere 9 or 10 a.m. Eastern time, then I'm catching people if they are coming into work or heading into work while they're on their phones, both East through West Coast. If I do something at about 3 to 5 o'clock in the evening, also good because you're getting people when they're on breaks or they're coming home or they're starting to log off or what have you. Posting something at midnight, as you can imagine, not as effective. How often to post? I would say if you could at least do twice a week, that puts you in the conversation without being really burdensome. And it also depends, is this really produced content? Is it taking you 4 hours to do? An average video for us collectively as a team takes us about 5 hours to produce. So, or is it something that you're able to do in half an hour and just stitch it together and go and CapCut, right? So whatever your post is, whether it's a blog or a video or what have you, if you can, I would try to do it twice a week. I would try to do it during weekdays, and I would try to do it during your kind of higher times of engagement, because that's when the algorithm is trying to decide if what you're doing is something that it should recommend. So you want to try to do it when you'll grab some of that traction. So, what message to say? And again, you don't need to do all of this in every message. Say, sell, solidify, secure. I'm going to repeat that. And if Sarah could add that as well, I appreciate it. Say, sell, solidify, secure. Your message needs to do at least one of these things. You need to say the truth clearly and unapologetically. Okay, so whenever you are trying to convey your point, say clearly what the truth is and think about why you are creating this bit of content. And again, it needs to be clear. Not everyone is following this stuff and has been for years. Don't use acronyms. Don't make things confusing. If you use someone's name, take a few seconds to describe who they are. You can't just say Schumer. You need to say, the minority Senate leader, right? People, if you want them to follow your story, bring them in the story with you, right? Sell. When possible, you want to sell your point in that you're trying to make with emotion. And preferably that means a humanizing or connecting story. All right. This is where we get into anecdotes. You can say data, absolutely, but make sure you sell it in with something that is relatable or makes sense to people. You want to solidify your point with facts. So it's great to have the really compelling emotional story. You need to solidify that story with facts, preferably facts that benefit them or facts that would change their perception on something. And then you want to secure your point by kind of giving them more information to protect them against the disinformation, the myths, the stereotypes, the hateful rhetoric that if it hasn't hit them yet, it absolutely will if they start paying attention to this issue. So you want to say something, you want to sell it with a humanizing story, you want to solidify it with facts, and then you want to secure them against the disinformation. Now, I'm going to use for this quick example the discussion we're having about immigration. Okay, how do we talk about this issue? There's a number of ways that you can. This is one example. Okay, so to say what is happening with immigration is not only cruel, but it's going to hurt all of us. That's the point I would like to make right now. Okay. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second. Many of you might be thinking, but the fact that it's wrong and the fact that it's cruel should be enough. To you, it is. But here's the thing, there are a lot of people, primarily our disengaged voters, that have grown up in kind of a bubble that believe if you're a good person, bad things don't happen to you. Because a lot of them have certain amounts of privilege and they have not had bad things happen to them, right? Or they've worked hard to overcome certain things. And to them, that's the same thing. They don't believe that bad things happen necessarily to good people most of the time. So, oh, this is cruel and it's wrong. Oh, that's a shame. That's over there. We could spend a whole day talking about that psychology, but this is why it's wrong only works to shame and push away people we are trying to persuade. All right. So instead, I would like to tell you why, listen, the stuff that's happening with immigration, it's not just that it's cruel, that it's wrong. It's cruel and it's harmful to all of us. First of all, they have completely misrepresented what they told you they were going to do. Okay? They told you that they were going to go after just the criminals and the people violating their laws. And yet, they are not only not going after criminals, they're arresting people in court while they're at their own immigration hearings. These are people trying to do the right thing. They're not going after the worst criminals that they told us were committing all these crimes. They're capturing children at kindergarten graduations. They're taking teenagers on their way to volunteer. They have misled what they're doing. There's our humanizing story, right? And you could go really deep into that because Lord knows there's enough, right? If you want to sell it, say, imagine that you are a family and you're at a kindergarten graduation. Okay. And ICE comes in and everyone starts screaming. This didn't just terrorize the people they were targeting. And we can have a whole conversation about that. It terrorized every child. Since when is terrorizing a community helping us? Okay. So get them in that place, describe it, accurately get them in the spot of what you're talking about. Here's the thing, 1 out of every 7 people in the United States is an immigrant. 1 out of every 7 is an immigrant. And so this idea that they're going to get rid of all of the immigrants, whether they're legal or not, that would be devastating for our economy. We keep talking about how it's going to hurt us. We picture immigrants as farmers, and it's true. 1 out of every 4 people that works in the agricultural industry, they are immigrants. So all of this food shortage and the expensive groceries, that's going to get a lot worse. 1 out of every 4 people in the construction industry is an immigrant. So if you think prices for houses are high now, if you think rent is high now, wait until they take away or scare off 1/4 of the workforce. But what you might not know is 1/4 of everyone in STEM, science, technology, engineering, math, 1/4 of everyone in STEM is an immigrant. We are going to hurt our research. We are going to hurt our advancement. We are going to hurt our country and lose our place as one of the top researching and technological breakthrough countries in the world. We are losing that because we are terrorizing immigrants because they're here in the country wanting to serve our country. One more thing so that I can make sure that I secure against disinformation. You might think they're taking from you, but here's the thing. Immigrants actually paid over $500 billion in taxes. In just Georgia alone, immigrants paid $1 billion in taxes. We are losing money when we deport immigrants. They pay taxes. If they have jobs, the taxes get taken out of their paychecks. And one of the things that they pay into is Medicare and Social Security. If we start kicking out all of the immigrants, they pay almost $200 billion a year in Social Security. Your Social Security is less secure if immigrants go away because they pay into benefits that they don't receive. So that is how you take something from it's just wrong to, no, 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 let me tell you what we're actually doing here. Yes, it's wrong, and here's why you should care. So whichever part of that you want to contribute content to, that could be 8 different videos. That could be a whole, who knows, right? What content moves you, what type of article you want to create, what type of post. It could be something very simple, a did you know? It could be an Instagram post with a graphic. Did you know immigrants paid almost $200 billion into Social Security last year, right? So I hope that this gives you a different framework on effective communication. I want to leave you with this thought. There is a lot that can be done. I want you to think about the goal of what you're trying to do. And there are 3 extremely worthy goals that I can give you. If you are looking ahead and you're like, listen, we got to think about midterms, great. Get involved with organizations or campaigns or whatever that will move that forward and will get behind candidates that you can support and flip the House and flip the Senate. It is very important. You want to focus on midterms, the opportunity is there. Don't wait for someone to call you. Go into a campaign office and ask if you can support them, and we are going to offer opportunities to volunteer as well. Second way you can give, we have to persuade people. We have to fight what's happening with disinformation, both sidesism, uh, framed media that is not giving us an accurate side to the story. Anytime you create, amplify, share content that is valid and useful, it is doing something really important. You are fighting propaganda. This propaganda could be for corporate profit. It could be for an agenda. We have a lot of propaganda happening right now all the time. How many shows are on CBS about cops? You want to know why? Right? We get worried about, so many different topics. I could go on and on and on about propaganda in this country, but okay. So fighting propaganda is a worthy and noble cause. Find something, disentangle it, and make it to where it makes sense to someone. Help start the deprogramming. And the third thing you can do is engage people. Being upset, being angry does not necessarily always work, but acknowledging that this is scary and confusing and kind of bringing them with you into the emotions you're feeling, that is extremely effective. Subtle difference. Being angry makes them feel like you're doing it at them. Saying that you're hurt, scared, and angry and saying why brings them into the story with you. Telling people what's really going on and why it's happening, slowing it down so they can follow the story. If you start watching a soap opera and there's no recap, you don't know what's happening. You don't know who's good. You don't know who's bad. You don't know anything that's happening. So likely you're just going to change the channel. Bring people into the story and then make sure you give them something positive they can do with that energy. And it could be something that doesn't have anything to do with you. And if you like this, if you feel this is important, please go and get involved with the Southern Poverty Law Center because they have a lawsuit against this very thing. You can send that energy in a positive way, or call your congressman and say this. Give them some place to do with that energy. That is also extremely worthy. So you can help with midterms, you can help fight propaganda, you can bring people in and give them the courage and the comfort to participate in this democracy so that we can save it together. I hope that you found this to be worthy time. We did this because we really wanted to provide a great outlet for positive energy when so many people expressed that they did not feel safe or able or physically geographically close to any of these protests that were happening with no kings across the country. And then it turned into something bigger where we're hoping to raise awareness about these issues and turn it into a training program that we're doing a road show essentially across the country. So if you know of anyone that could benefit from something like this, please let us know. We would love to come to your community. And in the meantime, I truly appreciate all of you and your support. On behalf of myself, the political fixer, Shauna Presley Vircher, our team, we truly appreciate you. Look for a lot more opportunities to get engaged with our organization and with partnering organizations that we spotlight and work alongside, including the Hillsborough County LGBTQ Democratic Caucus. We really, we're going to make sure if you're ready to pick up a shovel, whew, there's a lot of digging to be done. All right, you guys are more than welcome. I appreciate all of you. I'm so glad, Leah, that you found it helpful. That's so great. That's a relief for me to know. I know it can be a lot of information in a short time. Please stay safe out there and also get some rest and practice some self care. If you're going to be out there saving the planet today, make sure you binge watch something fun tomorrow. Like, take care of yourselves out there as well. And good to see all of you online. We'll be putting this out there if you want to share it later. And we'll be creating training modules on politicalfixer.com. Stay tuned for more of that. On behalf of myself and the political team, the Political Fixer team, I am Shauna Presley Vircher, the Political Fixer. Please take care of yourself, take care of each other, and go give them hell. Texas sized good trouble. That's what we're after. Talk to you soon.